The OPERAfit podcast.
Yes.
We are I want to start off just thanking all of you for all the feedback we received. We got so many fantastic questions, suggestions for topics, and offering different resources, different connections, and conversations to be had with other experts in all these fields, and just it's really, really exciting to have actually launched. Like, we're here, like, we've begun. Episode 1 is out and you guys loved it, and I'm so grateful for all the stuff that we heard as helpful feedback and suggestions. So I want to start off with thanking you guys. Thank you for listening, thank you for sharing all of the things. And today we wanted to go right to the heart of things, because how well-being interacts with our auditions and the way that we show up in performance mode, or when we're in a situation of judgment and yet we're supposed to be in vulnerability. Like, what does that really mean about ourselves and our experience of singing, and what we bring into those rooms when we walk into an audition or a performance, and how to access the most uninhibited sides of ourselves, like we do in practice rooms, like how to access when we are unblocked, untense, just totally present to the craft and to what we're communicating, and to just being in the room fully, rather than blah, 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 like 17,000 judgments of ourselves or interpretations of the situation.
Right.
So what did you... I know Emily has lots of like cool resources and like amazing anthropological roots about like what all this stuff is. So
there's a lot to read, people.
Yeah.
But I think the most basic place to start, and also like the most uncomfortable shared experience, is the knee-jerk reaction aspect of it. So what are our shared like physical reactions? I've heard people name shaky hands, shallow breath, wobbly knees, your extremities kind of everything going straight to the core in this performance anxiety physical reaction, which we know back in ancient times, in a performance anxiety situation, if you're not accepted by your tribe, by the tribe, your viability and your chances of survival are extremely diminished. So you want to please in whatever way that might be, that and that translates probably into any different job description and social interaction. This I think performance anxiety for our purposes is a good way of naming it. And so additionally, this fight or flight mechanism, how am I gonna protect myself and please all at the same time? So we have this reaction of the body going to this extreme preservation mode, creating all these external things that we experience that are really counterproductive when we're trying to sing. More information and an incredible resource on this would be Christina Driscoll. She is the founder of Gilded Within, an amazing arts consultation practice, and she's just a guru. She has an amazing performance anxiety in singers article that was really illuminating for me and definitely our community. So highly recommend that. So we have this knee-jerk reaction, and I think an interesting discussion that we were having was the idea of, okay, it's not bad that we feel this.
Yeah.
It's not a bad, we shouldn't punish ourselves or have any sort of guilt about this feeling.
Yeah, because I mean, anxiety begets more anxiety. So if we have anxiety about our performance anxiety, then it's kind of also counterproductive.
You're just flushing it.
Exactly. So in my experience, there are a lot of strategies as well as conscious choices, like consciousness to play with in terms of finding a way for you to be in and with your vulnerability and kind of in presentational mode. Like, let's be honest, like it's not like you just walk into the room of an audition the same way you walk into your bedroom. Like you don't feel that same level of safety when you walk into a room with someone you love in it versus when you walk into a panel. But you can actually consciously choose and have practices that support authenticity. Yeah, that's the word. Like vulnerability and authenticity in whatever setting that you're walking into. And yeah, we were talking before about like, it's not about tricking.
Right.
I love that you said that because it was, we were talking about that TED Talk thing that's like, what is it?
Fake it till you
make it.
Thing. Have you guys seen that one where she talks about like literally faking it till you make it in like these different power stances that actually change your body chemistry to like become more, I don't know, it was like a lot of chemistry, a lot of
mind-body connection, and how the physiology, like the chemical like relationship of your cortisol levels and all of that kind of stuff shifts when you stand in a more powerful position versus when you play small and like but you know, that's kind of a tangent as to what we're after, but the idea is using strategies and we've got a low battery.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Having strategies to if we click the computer, it'll wake up and charge.
Thanks for bearing with our technological.
We've got technical things we're playing with.
Wake up.
Yeah, I think when the computer's awake, it charges.
Sweet.
You guys, thank you guys for bearing with us. But so practices that support this consciousness and this engagement of your vulnerability. A bunch of different things came to mind for me.
Yes.
As a life coach, and as a person who has sung and auditioned for things, going into life coach land, one of the biggest things that unlocked my way of being with life, like in relationship to how I experience life, to how I relate to people, to my relationships with, like my relationship with my boyfriend, my relationship with singing, is identifying where I kind of knee-jerk react with programmed automatic behaviors that aren't serving me, and how I can choose beyond them from a different place of being. And what to put some more concrete terms, in that, what I, in my life coaching work, and from having received it as well as given it to my clients, is knowing what is something that we've learned from like a survival mechanism past, where yes, there's like things of our species that like help us survive, that we call it a survival mechanism for a reason. There's a reason we have a fear of, walking into a busy street, or, not being accepted by the tribe, or something, like having a people-pleasing thing in us has a very biological reason and like anthropological reason. But beyond that, there's also behaviors that we that are unique to ourselves, that kind of get in our own way, that we just kind of approach a situation from a knee-jerk, immediate, automatic response rather than a conscious choice. So what I'm offering in my, practice offering in this podcast today is this idea of choosing your essence. And we talked a little bit about this in the first episode, where this idea of your essential being, like what is it? What does that mean? How can you choose a way of being? It's kind of, it's a unique, an incredible journey to take. So I highly recommend, if you have any inclination about life coaching, reach out and I can send you to resources, or I can offer a free call, or I can, you know, point you to some books to read. But it's the idea of your essential nature. I actually have an essence name where I know exactly who I am when I'm not reacting from automatic programming.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Your most chosen self.
Yeah, but it's the interesting part of your essence is that it is who you are.
Yeah.
It's not a performance of who you are. It's not like
Would you say like it's who you would choose yourself to be, your
Right.
best self?
Kind of.
I don't mean to put words in your mouth.
No, but it's interesting to hear that reflection, because it's like it's hard to explain essence in totally out of context from like the actual work I do in life coaching.
Nitty-gritty.
Yeah, but so to kind of circle around, one way to approach an audition from a place that is not survival mode, right, and not I'm being judged, so I need to put on a face or fake it till I make it, or just like thick skin it up, is to come from your essence and to find find out who you are before you walk into a setting like that. To have a name, to have a list of qualities about who you are that gives you access to your power and your heart and a just different vibration, is the intention of having an essence name.
So can you give us, for our home listeners, can you give us like an example? It doesn't have to be yours. If it's personal, that's okay. But can you give us an example of like what someone could explore as being an example of an essence name?
Sure. So
Kind of
an essence name typically has 5 qualities listed to it. And it's encompassed through an exercise that takes about an hour and a half. So to give like an example of an essence name from off the top of my head, an essence of someone I know is power, exuberance, brilliance, heart, and source.
Okay.
But everybody has a very unique one. I'll give you mine. I'll put it out into the world. Mine is power, presence, magnetism, divinity, and home. And those words were arrived at through a very specific path of an exercise that I did. So if you are interested in having a consciousness tool, rather than just like a do this, here's a 5-step formula to having the perfect audition.
Right.
I think there is a lot of value to talking about simply your being and your consciousness around who you are and what you offer to a space. Whether you're sitting on the couch or you're in an audition room, that your essence is always there and accessible.
Right.
But it is a choice. It's an active choice to be with that vibration, that experience, that presence. So if you are interested in having that conversation, I'd be happy to chat with you about it, or at least share resources if you want to read about it. But having an essence name to me, and know, or at least having an idea that of an essence that even exists, rather than okay, this is how I knee-jerk react in an audition situation, and having something tangible to reach for consciously, I think is a really helpful thing to put into your space. And to consider whether you have a name or not. You know?
Yeah. And I think we were chatting about this earlier, but this really ties into the vulnerability aspect of it.
Yeah.
The idea that it is, while it's not the first conversation that's being had by auditioners right now, you know, you have this like samurai body visual. I don't know. That's what I think of when you're like doing this self-protection thing.
Yeah.
But
I'm just gonna grab a external charger really quick because I see my low battery going.
and
hang on one.
stay with you.
Keep chatting, please.
Well, so the idea of this vulnerability aspect of it being what is the meat and potatoes, not only of your performance experience, but your personal reflection experience. So, you know, the idea that you will have a more successful and grounding experience when you learn how to do this work that allows you to put up the mirror, see for yourself that, first of all, it's safe to be vulnerable in an audition setting and with yourself. It's safe to do this exploratory work and giving yourself yourself this identity and this tool to approach life and auditioning from. And I think, we've been having many conversations about shifting away from the terminology and the norms and this idea of faking it till you make it, and this armor that is, how many of us have just seen like how ingenuine that looks, and you can feel that. But I think that emotional setting your atmosphere up and doing that work ahead of time will only serve you in the long run. And along with that, as we know, mind and body intrinsically connected and interdependent, and beautifully so when you're doing the good hard work, the meaty work.
Yeah.
Sorry if that was loud. It was an externalization of my feelings. But so anything else you want to add about the what were we calling it?
The consciousness of vulnerability.
Yeah, the consciousness of vulnerability and your atmosphere, your emotional atmosphere that you're setting for yourself, and the importance of that.
Yeah. Is there anything I want to add? I mean, I want to start a dialogue about this because, I feel like I'm coming at it having been a singer in a professional setting for 3 years-ish now. I've sung with young artist programs, I've sung in concerts, I've sung in lots of different things that my approach to getting in my atmosphere, like creating the atmosphere of my like ideal vulnerability sounds like kind of like,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, but like creating the like access way, the highway for my voice to be given in a way that is the least inhibited, the most expressive, the most vulnerable, has evolved a lot.
True.
And one way that I used to do it isn't the way that I currently do it, and the way that I currently do it might not be how I do it in next year. But something I think is worth mentioning before we get into the practices of things I do physically before I walk into an audition room, is this idea of consciousness, and is this playfulness with the fight or flight, the anxiety thing, coming at playfulness,
right,
rather than fear and trepidation and I'm doing that thing
again. Yeah,
like
truly.
Not making yourself wrong for having a very normal experience when walking into a room where you're being judged.
Yeah.
So normalizing that experience and having emotional and mental awareness to choose that you are enough and that your like being in this universe, and we're getting a little woo-woo, of course, it's us. Your experience and the gift of your being in this universe is something you can access in any situation. And there's no how-to formula to choosing to be in your essence rather than in survival mode. But it is something that you can play with and get curious about, and maybe journal about it, or reach out to me, reach out to Em about it. Like, be with this idea that your consciousness can actually have a very direct influence about how you do stuff.
And I think now more than ever, this conversation that we're having is growing and expanding and being fleshed out by people who are not, who are interested in the spiritual as well as the emotional. So I know there are resources that are available to you, definitely through the OPERAfit Singer Resource Library. seriously go read that dissertation. Okay?
Christina Driscoll's dissertation, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's kind of one piece that we're playing with.
Yeah, so the one piece of the puzzle that is intrinsically linked to...
And it goes deeper than mindfulness. Like this movement of mindfulness is wonderful. I'm not knocking it, but like, what is mindfulness? Like, what is mindful behavior? Who am I in mindfulness? I think this idea of consciousness and being and your essence gave me better access to what that meant.
And for me, when I hear the word mindfulness, the beauty of the practice of mindfulness is that you are consciously observing what is going on around you. And this idea of what we're discussing is being mindful of what you're observing around you, what you're experiencing, but also before that, setting up that atmosphere, putting these things in place for yourself, things that you've meditated on and dug through and decided are the most successful for you, that you have made conscious, active decisions to put in place for yourself.
Yeah.
So with those things, let's talk about some of those practical practical things that go beyond consciousness and emotional experience. So I think I'll just share what I do.
Do it.
It's been working for because we want to have a successful artistic experience. I feel like I conveyed my artistry, my ability, and my potential well in this setting. In my mind, those are the things that are my goals.
Yeah.
And recently, I have added to those three. I want to have had a tangible, beautiful experience. So, just for me, not about getting a job, not about impressing the right people at the right time, not about those people who are outside waiting to go in who are listening to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've all been there.
Yeah.
But so some of the practices that I do and that we definitely have been talking about in the OPERAfit community are as follows. I have found that powerful, strong yoga paired with meditation and prayer for me have been really useful tools in, centering, activating my body in a way that's not going to make me like phlegmy from all my cardio.
Yeah.
So you can still sing, I'm still activated, I'm still warm, the muscles are engaged, they know where they are in space and time in the universe. And having some time really that I set aside for myself alone, to be quiet, to be conscious, to be aware of what I'm taking in, what I'm putting out into my day, and embracing the power that I have to shape that experience, and to not hold on to anything that would be an unsavory component to a successful audition. So, guilt about an unkind word that I said, or something, hearing that, oh my gosh, auditions are already, or results are already posted, so I might as well not even, just taking control of my own atmosphere mentally and physically. And another big thing that I have noticed personally is nutrition.
Yes.
And I know we'll talk about this soon, and more in depth, but the way that I choose to feed my body, feed the instrument, has a huge impact on how I feel. Because I know a lot of what comes along with this performance anxiety and fight or flight is not eating at all, or
stress
eating, or just kind of you go out of whack a little bit. You go a little off kilter, but being mindful about what you put in your body and knowing what works for you.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of every individual, is that everyone's body chemistry is different.
Yeah.
So for me, taking the time to figure out what was the most advantageous for my digestion, the most advantageous for my mechanism and my body, and energizing.
I have very similar practices to that, but I want to echo all that Emily has said and add Yes, so activating the body is a really big part. I've done lots of different variations of that, but never something like she said, like producing phlegm or like, if you do a very heavy cardio, then that tends to be a pretty common.
A Fleming. Unless you're an Olympian. Great.
Right. So I'll have some sort of flow that I do from home. I don't usually like going to any sort of gym or public location while I'm doing it. I'll do it from home. And it won't just be like sit in Shavasana for 10 minutes. It'll be like active work for at least 30 minutes.
Oh, a true warm-up.
Yeah, a true body warm-up. And vocalizing in the morning is also part of just like waking up, hi voice. Yeah. And kind of all that Emily said, like with nutrition, you know, being really conscious of eating clean, whole foods that, because I think my old ways with auditions would be, I struggled with acid reflux and IBS for a very long time and had a lot of medications and just anxiety about my gut and stomach and how it might influence my voice negatively. And stress is a really big trigger for reflux. So you kind of feel like your own worst enemy. Yes. So I used to think that just eating a lot of carbs would be a really like neutral way to eat before an audition. And I have found since doing a lot of work with OPERAfit and experimenting and learning about my body that in fact a very well balanced diet in a day is much better for my body than if I'm just sticking to carbs, even if they're clean carbs. Like I find I need that balance of fruits, vegetables, carbs, healthy fats, all of the things to sustain my energy and my just like sense of vitality.
Sense of vitality is a
big thing. Yes. Because then, you know, we all get swept up in the adrenaline of the moment. But then it's like how bad the crash is after always is information for me that I didn't gas up enough before. You know, like if I'm only on adrenaline and I've eaten like shit the whole day, I know my crash is going to be so much harder and just unpleasant after an audition than if I have been fueled and been conscious about eating things that like are delicious and not a punishment, but also are clean and whole and nutritious. Right. So that's a big thing for me as well. And another, just my last little nugget of a practice, you know, that reinforces this idea of consciousness and creating your atmosphere walking into auditions is kind of a visualization component. I think that it's probably similar to your prayer. I just don't approach it as that. So to put it in another like language, I guess, for those of you who may not relate to prayer as like an action that you do consciously, what I think of as visualization or maybe affirmations for some of you is like journaling. It's like writing a future journal from the past, or like I will write out what the experience was like before it's actually happened, so that I'll say like I was so present and grounded when I walked into that room and I felt like such a spark with the judges when I looked at them and I said, hi, how are you? How's your afternoon? I'll like literally describe it as if it's a journal entry that I'm writing after the audition. Yes. So it's like a visualization, but also like what I wish into existence, you know, like what do I hope to create from this experience? Like a prayer, like I need the universe to support me. I need to feel grounded in who I am in my being, and I need to feel connected to the experience and the people in the room and the music. So I will channel that by writing it like an affirmation almost, like I experienced feeling enough and feeling full of like life and love while I was singing, and I experienced you know, a deep connection and communication with my pianist, and you know, I'll like write it out like it already happened, but it's before I walk in that room. And I think that that could be a really useful tool for those of you listening who are searching for a mindfulness component. Are we still going? Sorry if our audio just went a little bit funny. It looks like our mic just cut out, possibly. Well, so if not, I mean, we've got we've got some iPhone audio for you. But anyway, I thought that might be a helpful idea to put in your space, since we're talking about mindfulness and consciousness activating the body, being aware of what you're putting in your body, and having like tangible exercises to complete and do before you walk in that room, so that you come in with a new idea of what experience you can create and what control. I hesitate to use control because that can have kind of like a feeling to it, just the word itself.
What influence you
what
have.
influence you
Yeah.
have, what power you have
Yeah.
in creating the atmosphere and the experience that you want from an audition, or from a setting that usually invokes a knee-jerk,
Negative.
fearful reaction.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
creating something different from that experience. So
Yeah.
hopefully you got some value out of this for yourselves. I'd love to hear what you guys do before auditions, to channel that essence, to choose powerfully for yourself in your practices before walking into that audition room. Any resources that you have to suggest about books you've read, resources to read, people to consult. And please reach out if you have questions about Christina Driscoll's resource. Emily is a great resource to channel you to her and to the dissertation she wrote and articles. If you want to have a free consultation with me, I'd be happy to talk to you about essence and all of that, and how to choose that for yourself. And otherwise, thank you for joining us for another week at the OPERAfit podcast.
Dun, 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 dun.
Da, 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 da. So I am really grateful for all of you listeners, all of your likes and comments and shares and your suggestions, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.